All right. So let's start over on, well, one, hello, everyone. It's good to have you here. Hope everyone's doing well and staying safe and all that good stuff. I can't believe it, Brendan. Okay, so let's go over, I'm going to start on page 30, and it's the rubrics for step one. And I think this is a great place to start. And then we'll just keep moving forward, all right? So if you go to step one, it has its rubrics. You do not want to do anything at a level one. You don't want to do anything at a level two, period. CTC starts everything off. They start reading at a level 3. So we're going to start working at a level 3. You can always boost yourself up to 4 and then boost yourself up to 5. But 3 is a great place to start. It's manageable. And I'm going to read everything that goes into a level 3. If you hit all these points, you're hitting a 3, all right? So candidates' learning segment includes manageable context, manageable content, specific learning goals, and ELD goals as appropriate that clearly builds on the student's prior content knowledge. So when they talk about learning goals and ELD goals as appropriate, that means for whatever grade level you have, you pick appropriate goals and appropriate ELD goals, okay? You don't want to go way up, you don't want to go way low, you want to be right in line with the population you are engaging with. Everything on this cycle 1, you're dealing with individual students. In this cycle, you're dealing with the entire classroom, all right? And it reads, appropriate that clearly builds on the student's prior content knowledge. So everything you do is based on their prior knowledge. What have they been learned before? And where are you taking them now? Where are you going? How are you progressing based on what they learned before, where they are with all the assets that they bring to the classroom, and then how are you building learning goals that connect with where they are and elevating them forward, okay? And then the UOD based strategies, and the UOD is Universal Design for Learning. UOD based strategies are clearly described within the 3 to 5 lessons, okay? Assessments and rubrics. So the UOD, Universal Design for Learning, is clearly defined in the lesson and the assessments, okay? And the rubrics. We want to just keep pounding that ULD throughout everything that you do, okay? And here's the next point that makes it a level 3. Candidate clearly identifies the multiple kinds of assessments and rubric evidence they will use to determine that students met the learning goals. So your 3 rubrics that you're going, 3 assessments and the 2 rubrics that you do, the candidate clearly defines the multiple kinds of assessments and rubric evidence they will use to determine the students that students met the learning goals. So your rubrics and your assessments are all going to help determine whether the students have met the learning goals. So everything that you do, there's going to be this constant link and connection throughout everything. Nothing's going to be separate and stands on its own. Everything is connective, okay? And then the next one, learning segment includes lessons that support students' use of age and or developmentally appropriate higher order thinking. Higher order thinking is very important in this, and it should be appropriate to their age level, their grade level, and their, how they're going to develop appropriately. So the higher order thinking, we're going to talk about that tonight a little more, but your higher order thinking is in relations to the student's age, where they are with their assets, and it keeps building and it connects there, okay? Content-specific instruction strategies include adoptions that will assist students to reach learning goals in multiple ways. Okay, so the content-specific instruction strategies include adaptations that will assist students to reach learning goals in multiple ways. So because you have a multiple classroom with a lot of different learners, then they should have different ways that they can get to the learning and the goals that you have set. Okay, you're not dealing with just one student, you're dealing with a population. So fix it so everyone has a chance with the assets that they bring to the classroom to engage in the learning process. And grouping strategies are produced and clearly appropriate for students to reach their learning goals. When you hit all of these points, you're hitting a 3. And hitting a 3 is clearly passing. Now, you don't have to avoid 4 and you don't have to avoid 5, but we have to have a starting point, and CTC, their assessors, they start grading at a 3 and they go up or they go down. In our case, we do not want them to go down. So when you start doing your work, go back to the rubric, pay close attention to the rubric, okay? Now, next, let's swing over to page 16. And on page 16, we're going to talk about, just real quickly and briefly, the evidence to be submitted. And the evidence is what you will be doing and submitting on the sheets that I gave you, on the templates that I gave you. This is the evidence that you're going to be submitting. So part A, there's going to be a written narrative, which is going to be contextual information, no more than 4 pages. And we'll talk about that tonight. Part B is the learning segment template. You're going to do 3 to 5 lessons. That's the learning segment template. And number C, written narrative, assessment descriptions, no more than 7 pages, including additional materials if necessary. When you do the assessments that you're going to talk about, when you start to explain that out, it's going to be 7 pages. That's your informal, your formal, and your student assessment. You're going to explain that out, and then whatever assessments you have to attach with that. And then part D, descriptions or blank copy of the informal assessment. Okay, a description or a blank copy of the informal assessment. And then part D, a description or blank copies of both the student's self-assessment and a corresponding rubric. When you do the self-assessment for the student, you must develop a rubric also. I'm not taking questions right now, Brendan, so give me some space here and then I'll come back to you later. And then part F, a description or blank copies of both the formal assessment and the corresponding rubric. So you're going to have 3 assessments. You're going to have an informal assessment, and you're going to have to explain that out, how you're going to conduct an informal assessment. But you do not need a rubric for that. For the second assessment, which is a student self-assessment, you've got to develop that student's self-assessment, a description, or blank copies. Okay, so you can do a description or you can do a blank copy, showing what that assessment is going to look like, or you can just describe it out. And it's going to need a rubric. And then a description of the blank copies of the formal assessment. Again, a description or blank copies, and you're going to need a rubric. All right, so now on part D, part E, and part F, you're going to be dropping in two documents for E and 2 documents for F. On number D, you're going to drop in a document. Go up to number C, and number C, it reads written narrative, assessment descriptions, no more than 7 pages, including additional information if necessary. So there, you're going to really be explaining and really detailing the assessment out. Okay, so this is all the evidence that you're going to need to be submitting for step 1. It's quite a bit of stuff, but it's all manageable piece by piece. All right, that's page 16. Let's swing over to page 7. And so this is just sort of a little catch up. This is a nice come after for what we just went over. So what you need to do, step 1, okay? What the freak are we going to be doing? And we already talked about the evidence to be submitted. It's right on the side there. But let's just kind of, it doesn't hurt to go through this part right here. Step 1, plan. And let me tell you, when we talk about plan, what you're doing in step 1 is you're planning for step 2, step 3, and step 4. That's what you're doing. You are putting together all the evidence and all the layout for your step 2, 3, and 4. Because when we roll over to step 2, you're gonna start doing some videos. You're gonna start laying some things out. And it's all gonna be based on what you did in step 1. Okay, so this is the planning phase. You're going to plan your 3 to 5 lessons. You're going to lay out your assessments. With your informal assessment, you're going to show them how you're going to conduct and do and carry out an informal assessment. You're going to put together your learning goals. Okay, you're going to plan and lay it all out. And then step 2, step 3, and step 4, you're going to start breaking it down and carrying it out. So that helps you make sense of all of this, planning it and then putting it into motion 2, 3, and 4. All right. So let's take a quick read through this. First bullet, provide contextual information about the whole class you are teaching within a school placement. And like I said earlier, you're going to be dealing with your entire classroom here, not individual students, the whole classroom. So provide contextual information about the whole class you are teaching within the school placement. And we're going to talk about that tonight, okay? We're just going to, talk about what you're going to be doing. The next bullet, provide a plan for a series of 3 to 5 lessons and complete the learning segment template that includes 1, California content standards or curriculum framework. You cannot do this stuff without talking about the California content standards and or a curriculum framework. And everybody in here, this is not new to you. This is not something you're going, oh, what's that? You all know that. You're in the know, okay? And we're going to talk about this some more because when we talk about California content standards, when you do use them, you're going to be very clear and very specific and very detailed to the reader about which standard you are using. You're going to spell it out, okay? No ambiguity. Number 2, content-specific learning goals and ELD goals if appropriate, okay? So let's step back up again, because it's quite a few here. I don't want you to lose it. Develop a plan for a series of 3 to 5 lessons and complete the learning segment template that includes, down to 3, evidence and descriptions of assessments of learning, classroom-based informal assessment, student self-assessment, and a formal assessment, okay? Again, we know this lesson is all about assessment-driven instructions. So when you think about these informal and the student self-assessment and the formal assessment, these assessments have to be good. They have to be developed, they have to make sense, and they have to correlate with the age group you are working with, okay? And when you do those 2 rubrics, they have to correlate with the assessment. They have to connect, all right? And number 4, how each lesson links to prior learning and builds on previous lessons. These 3 to 5 lessons that you do, they can't be willy-nilly. They have to connect. They have to like work together. And I'm going to share this little bit of information I have with you. So when you talk about that, it's like, how does the segment fit with the continuum of their learning, and how are each of the lessons in the segment connected to each other so that students are building their knowledge, building their skills and their abilities through the lessons that you put together. We're not looking at isolated lessons that do not have anything to do with what came before the segment. We want a connection, okay? Okay, how does the lesson fit into the continuum of their learning? These lessons need to link together, okay? Does that make sense to everyone? One thumbs up will make me feel really good. Okay, thanks, Ellie. I mean, we want a connection. Do not have these lessons not connecting. 3 to 5, each one builds on the next one. We all know that. We're educators. You know that. Every lesson should just be growing and building their knowledge, improving their skills and their abilities through the lessons that you put together. Okay, is everyone with me? Okay, Bettina, let me run through these 10, and then I'm gonna go to Brendan, and then I'm gonna come to you, okay? Bettina and Brendan. I got you guys down right at the bottom. Number 5, lesson activities. So you should have lesson activities, including how you and your students will use educational technology and how will it ensure equitable access to content. So when you build these lessons, you're going to talk about educational technology too, okay? Include it in that, weave it in there, and then show how this educational technology will ensure equitable access to the content. And so when we go over to 2, 3, and 4, you're going to have to show in those videos students using that technology. So when you build this lesson, incorporate technology into it. Are they going to be using the computers, their phones, whatever technology that you can think of? Will they be using a whiteboard? Whatever kind of technology, and not the whiteboard, but they have one with all the technology attached to it. Whatever kind of technology, weave it into the lesson, because it's going to have to come out in 2, 3, and 4. It's going to come out again. Okay. All right. And then, how is technology going to really ensure that everybody gets access to this? You see what I'm saying? To the content. And number 6, instructional strategies. Number 7, grouping strategies. Number 8, English language development and academic language development. How are you going to be developing these, okay, with that lesson? Number 9, instructional adaptations. And number 10, resources and materials to support their learning. What kind of resources and materials can you weave into that lesson to help support and elevate their learning? Okay, and then here are our next 2 and final bullets. Describe one of your planned informal assessments and student self-assessment and the formal assessment, and explain how they will how they are aligned to and measure the content-specific learning goals and ELD goals if appropriate. So again, they're asking you to make sure that you got those 3 assessments and they're lined with your learning goals. All right. Everything, just keep in mind that you're building all these pieces, and all of these pieces need to connect. They need to all connect with one another, because you're not doing these individual separate things. They're all linked to the student's learning. All right. And the last one for page 7, provide a description or blank copy of the informal assessment, student self-assessment, and the rubric, the informal assessment and the rubric, including definitions of proficient student performance. Okay. Now, if you do the assessment and you forget to do the rubric, you're going to lose points.
Normally, I'll be at fucking Fullerton for this, but now I have this dude talk.
Can you believe that? She doesn't even have a sense to go mute, right? All right. So this is what you need to do. All right. So let me, Brendan and then Bettina. Brendan, let's go with some 2 quick questions, and then we're going to keep forging forward. Brendan, do you have a question?
Yeah, I looked at your page, but I haven't found like where the learning segment template is. And then for the written narrative assessment descriptions, like what template do we use?
The templates, I sent all the templates. They're on Canvas. That's where you can find the templates. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, because I didn't see that there.
No problem. Good question. Thank you very much, Bettina.
Yes, regarding the prior knowledge, the first lesson, does it have to be connected to like an imaginary lesson, or do we start from lesson 2 connecting to lesson 1, etc.?
It shouldn't be an imaginary lesson. It should be, just show a connection. When you start talking about your students and laying everything out, that should help set the groundwork for what kind of lessons that you're going to be teaching your students.
But I mean, just lesson 1, because I know the following lessons will connect to the previous lesson, but the first lesson, because we have to, from what I understood just now, we have to create a few of them.
3 to 5.
Yeah, so the first one doesn't need to be, do we need to specify prior knowledge for that one as well?
You should. I mean, when you start explaining your class out and really explaining who your class is, your first lesson can be a direct result of your whole explicit explanation of your class. When you explain your class out, you can talk about the fact that we've been doing work on this or that and that, and students have been really showing their assets to this. They've been showing that they understand this. They've been really taking to this lesson, and then pick up with your lessons and start going from there. But no, your first lesson should not be imaginary, okay? Does that make sense to you? Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
You saying, yeah, like I did when my mother asked me stuff. I'm like, yeah. Okay, so, but no, it's not an imaginary lesson that you sort of fake out and then start building on that. When you start talking about and explaining your students, then you can use that to springboard into your lessons, your first lesson and on from there, okay? Daniela, and then I'm gonna keep forging forward.
Of course. No, to add on to that, so I teach 7th and 8th grade, but I did my cycle 1 on 7th grade World Civ. And we started out with Silk Road, and now we're already back in China with going through the same geographic features, the same paths, the same goods. So I'm trying to connect it all back to that original unit. So I think that's how you could do that.
Very
right?
good. And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Very good.
I'm good. I'm glad I'm on the right track for that.
You are on the right track. And you see, you all you're doing, you're making this connection and you're building on it. But whatever the case, you don't want to do imaginary. You want there to be some connection, and you can start establishing that connection when you start laying out that contextual in that first 4 pages, okay? All right, very good, thank you. All right, let's go swing over. We did page 30, page 16. Let's swing over to page 3 real fast. And I know a lot of this, you're saying, well, dude, you already just did this. But, the way learning is all about being repetitive and to keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it, because I want you to walk away going, oh, I understand. I get it. I know what I'm supposed to be going after. So I kind of thought this is a good way to segue into moving forward. Go to page 3. And then let's start with, we're just going to read a little bit on this page. Let's start at the very top where it reads, the ULD focuses on 3 key principles, okay? Provide multiple means of representation, the what of learning. Provide multiple means of actions and expressions, the how of learning. And then provide multiple means of engagement, the why of learning. Just lay it all out. What, how, and why. Just keep explaining that through when you start sharing this information. And one thing I want to bring to your attention, you're going to have these assessors who are going to be reading your work. And I want you to get this and sort of try to buy into this concept. What you're going to be writing shouldn't have anything to do with you, but it should have everything to do with your reader. Make sure that you explain everything. Be very detailed. Be explicit. Don't let them have to read and guess. Write something down, and you may know what it is. You may totally understand it. But the question is, when I read it, will I understand? Will it resonate with your reader? This is very important. And I'll throw this little caveat in. Some students, they were using the California content standards, and they were just using abbreviations and not being really clear. And so they were getting an A9 saying that this student didn't use the California content standards. And the student called me and goes, but I use it right here. And I go, dude, you didn't even really explain it out. You put all these abbreviations in there. Hey man, when you use these standards, spell it out, lay it out, make it very clear which standards you are using. Be explicit, okay? The more explicit and the clear you are, the easier it is for your reader to bite into your work, and it keeps them flowing and moving successfully in the work that you presented. Be clear, be precise, and be very detailed. It's helpful to keep you at a 3, okay? So let's take a look at the next thing here, step 1 plan. I'm gonna try to, talk a little bit about this some more and just keep reiterating things over and over. So, using the learning segment template, develop a plan for a series of 3 to 5 content-specific lessons, okay? Lessons that occur over multiple days and support the academic and language development needs of your students. When you do that first part, when you start to, in those first 4 pages, kind of lay your class out, talk about your class and their assets, this is what you want your lessons to work with, okay? What's their language? What are their needs? Where are they falling short? Where do they need a lot of good support, okay? So keep that in mind, including the students' use of educational technology, okay? So there's gotta be some kind of talk about the technology, because like I said, when you get in your other rooms, they're gonna have to be using technology in the videos. So put the technology in the lesson, weave it in there. What kind of technology are you going to be using and letting your students engage with through the learning process, okay? Although your sequence of 3 to 5 lessons may be part of a longer unit of instructions, your sequences should have a clear starting point and ending point related to a particular learning goal or goals. You have got to connect your lessons with learning goals. And you all know about that. Make that connection. They link together, okay? So, and then this is just something that I wrote out. The 3 to 5 lessons don't have to be a unit of study in and of itself, but it should be a sequence of lessons that connect to each other and matter to each other. Do you feel me? Don't have these lessons be disjointed. Have them a little chain connect. And I'll say this again, I'll read this again. Be a sequence of lessons that connect to each other, that keeps elevating your students, elevating their knowledge, elevating their skills, okay? And matter, these lessons matter to each other, meaning that if you took away lesson 2, lesson 1 and 3 are gonna be flat. Or if you took away lesson 3, 1 and 2 are not gonna work so well. Have them related to each other, okay? And make it, within a larger unit of study. Make it connect, okay? Now, when you talk about your learning needs, make sure you attend to the assets and the learning needs of your students. And you want to be positive about your students. Whatever you do, don't speak negative about your classroom. Whatever their needs are, if there is something negative, talk about it in a positive and uplifting way, and how you're going to challenge that and really start to move your students forward. Does that make sense to anyone? Is what I'm saying, does it make sense? Is it resonating in any way? Do I need to slow down? Am I going too fast? Can I get a quick informal assessment?
Yep, good. Just do I have a quick question, Dr. Robinson?
Okay, well, first answer my question. I'm doing a little informal assessment here. How am I doing? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Is this working? Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Tyler. Okay, boys, talk to me.
Yeah, I think it's good. No, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on so like we have to literally, like what we're doing is we're connecting to our previous submission, CalTPA submission. Meaning like, are we connecting it to our, like I did imperialism, grade 10 imperialism. And
no, you're not connecting it to cycle 1. You're in a new cycle right now. Okay, you're in a new cycle. So I'm answering your question. No, cycle 2 does not have to connect with cycle 1. So I'm answering that question, and I don't know what else you want from me. So does that make sense?
Yeah, be good. You're good, Dr. Robinson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, brother. Okay, I'm going to keep moving forward. So make sure I read this, but I'm going to do it again. And give me 1 second, Michael. I'll finish this out and we'll talk. Make sure you attend to the assets and the learning needs of your students. And however you talk about these, you want to be positive. Don't be negative in anything you write about your class. If your class is too loud and too overactive, find a way to be positive about that and show how you're going to use that in the lessons for your students, okay? Be positive about what your students bring to the classroom and the learning, okay? Show where they are and show how you want to move them and develop them further. But whatever you do, do not be negative to any degree in anything you write. All right? Brother Michael, talk to me real fast.
All right, yeah, just real quick about the learning goals, learning objectives. So like in science, we have the 3-dimensional goals of the NGSS. It's okay to have like one goal covering all 5 lessons, right? Because like we have like an anchoring phenomenon. The whole thing might carry over like, 2 weeks.
You can do that, Brother Michael. Absolutely. Because
okay.
when they lay it out here, they put learning goal, and then they throw in the little parentheses and they put the S. So you can either have a learning goal that carries through, or you can have learning goals. And however you do that, Michael, just be very clear for the reader. Just like
Gotcha.
you started to explain to me, you said, oh, because we have, hey man, that's how you want to share that information, okay?
Cool, sounds good, thank you.
Thanks, Daddy. Oh, good question. And I'll just reiterate one more time, folks. One thing that's going to really help propel you forward is clarity. Okay? And I said this once and I'll say it again. It's one thing because you all know, you're in your heads, you know what you're doing, you're a science person, you understand this, but your reader, help the reader out. Be clear to them, explain things out. If you're going to use one goal, just say, for this, we'll be using one goal. We've decided to use one goal because through the science, blah, 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 blah. And then when your reader goes, okay, I got this. This makes sense to me. I can deal with this. I can keep moving forward. All right. This is very important in building your evidence for the reader. Okay. Okay, so use, okay, and then going back to page 3, and then I went down to learning goals, and then I go, use what you know about your students' assets and learning needs and learning context to plan and teach your lesson. So you're sharing stuff about your schools, your students, use that to build your lesson, okay? And so I'll read that so it'll make sense. Use what you know about your students' assets and learning needs and learning context to plan and teach your lessons based on California content standards and or curriculum framework. Okay. Next thing, what do your students bring to the lessons? What do their learning needs bring to that whole process that helps you organize and formulate? Okay. And so it's based on the California content standards or curriculum frameworks and California English language development standards, if appropriate. Okay, using the content specific pedagogy for your discipline. All right. How's everybody doing so far?
Doing good.
Okay.
Good, thank you, Professor.
Very good.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep moving forward. Michael, talk to me. No, everybody's just giving me. Okay, thanks. We're cool. Okay. So I want to look at this call out box because they have these call out boxes throughout. And I think these call out boxes are important. They have a little important information that we can squeeze into. Brendan, give me some space here and I'll hit you in a few minutes. Okay, little brother? Learning goals refer to specific statements or intended student attainment of essential concepts and skills. The learning goal is the heart of assessment for learning and needs to be made clear at the planning stage. If teachers are to find assessments for learning authentic and essential for student success. Learning goals may include both content-specific goals as well as English language development, ELD goals. Okay? And you all know what learning goals are. I'm not trying to insult you. You guys this is your zone, but I just want to bring this out so you can bite into it and go, got it. Moises, no, Brendan, and then Moises.
Yeah, I went back into your course materials thing.
Okay, Brendan, hold on, brother. Here's the deal. Let's deal with that. Let's deal with that in the back end. How about I'll end like 5 minutes earlier, and if something is not there, I'll take it and make sure I get it there. And I may have to apologize, but right now, let's come back to that. But thank you, Brendan. I appreciate you.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
Moises, hit me up, brother.
Yeah, real quick, just for the learning goals, should you recommend doing backward design or using language from backward design? So we can kind of make sure the assessments connect to learning objectives?
You know, all I can say is you're gonna have to decide on that. You're gonna have to decide what is the best way to lay that out so that your assessor can read it and understand it and make sense of it. This is where you're going to have to come in as an educator and be creative or smart in how you lay out those learning goals. I don't want to say, oh, you need to do this, and then lead everybody down some rabbit hole. So you're all individuals, you understand learning goals, and you're going to have to decide how you build that and include that in the process. All right, Moises? Nina, how are you? It's good to see you, little sister. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So it looks like we have to have the content standards, but then it sounds to me like the English language development goals are optional.
If they're appropriate, if they're needed, you know what I'm saying? The reason out here, learning goals may include, that means may or may not include both content specific goals as well as English language development goals.
Mhm.
So
So we don't have to force to try to find a way to include English language goals.
you don't have to force, you know, if you're not using them, you could even say the English language goals are not appropriate here, or you can just acknowledge that I understand it, but they won't be used here, or they will be used here, or so, okay, so they may or may not.
Okay,
Thank you, Nina.
thank you.
Okay, and then hitting up this last part on page 3, going down it reads, plan lessons should encourage the students to engage in age and or developmentally appropriate higher order thinking skills. And man, this higher order thinking has been just mentioned throughout this entire process. So you should be thinking about Bloom's taxonomy. You should be thinking that when you go to higher order thinking, we want to make sure that the students are analyzing, that they're questioning, and just really digging deep into the lesson. So you want higher order thinking. And you know what we should do is, let me ask you a question. Is everyone clear on what higher order thinking is?
Yes, it's like
Yes.
it's like when you sit there and you ask questions that extend the original question.
Exactly. It gets students to really start to asking more questions because of something that you put together. How do you get them to go from this level to start thinking about this level? When you say chickens lay eggs, or you say, then they go, whoa, so does that mean there's a little chick turn into, a big chicken? Is that chicken gonna lay, where they have this, they're forced to start thinking elevated, okay? That's very important in every piece. From step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4, they keep talking about higher order thinking, all right? So make sure that your lesson plan is going to be elevating and causing your students to think deeply, okay? So that's going to be analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating, and interpretation, and transfer, okay? As they develop a deeper thinking of the content and academic language, students are doing something that shows. So your students are doing something that's going to help show this. The form, so back up. As they develop a deeper understanding of the content of academic language, the formal assessment must allow the students to demonstrate their understanding of the content through the development of a product, participation in a process, or delivery of a performance. So when we start thinking about the formal assessment, you're really getting down to this nitty gritty. Really, it's being very pointed. What did they get from this, and how do you start to give it out? And that all comes from a product, participation in a process, or delivery. You will use a rubric to assess the qualities of the student's work. Okay, so I just wanted to bring those point outs. And that's what I wanted to bring out on page 3. So we can go from page 3 now, and let's swing over to page 10. Where we're actually going into plan 1. So before I go to page 10, I'll just leave this space. Are there any questions or just some airtime?
Dr. Robinson, I did have a question.
Oh yeah, and here's and that's Michelle.
Yes.
Hey, and listen, won't you all do me a favor and don't call me Dr. Robinson, just call me Quentin, okay?
Oh, Quentin,
No, I really appreciate that. Talk to me, Michelle.
And as I talk to you, my dogs will bark. I'm so sorry, but
No, that's cool.
quickly, I have an honors level 9th grade ELA class, and then
Okay.
I have my other classes are regular 9th grade ELA. Would it be okay to use the honors class if I don't have a language learner in there? What would you recommend, or should I use a regular ELA class with special needs kids and my language learners?
Yeah, I would just use the language learners. Yeah, I would use that you have 2 classes. Tell me again what the classes are.
So the first class is an honors level 9th grade English class.
Okay.
But I do not have language learners in there, so the ELD goals really wouldn't apply.
And
It's
then what
great
you can
class.
do, if you
Yeah.
decide to go with that class, explain that out in your writing.
Okay, and then on my other classes, I mean, they're good too, and I do have, they're large classes with a considerable amount of high level special needs kids and then
Okay.
language learners. So would it be preferable to use the regular English class with a variety of other learners?
You know, there's no real preference. You know, it will be whatever. It's kind of going to come down to whatever you choose. Because imagine if you just had one of those 2 classes, then that's the class you're going to go with. So of those 2, just pick the one, Michelle, that you feel more comfortable with. And when you talk about your whole class, lay out the information, lay out the population, and your reader is going to know exactly what you have and what you don't have. And so pretty much in answering your question, Michelle, it's going to come down to whichever one of those 2 that you feel more comfortable writing about and using in this process. That's what it's going to come down to.
Okay, so then with the honors level class, if I don't have ELD goals, I'm okay.
You're okay. You can just lay that out in your, when you just to spell it out, when you lay out, when you start explaining when you start explaining that classroom out. And yes, you're okay not to have, if you don't have it in there, you don't have it in there. Simple as that.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Ellie and then Nina.
Hi, Quentin, how are you?
I'm cool, thank you.
Good. So I have a question about educational technology.
Okay.
It's been mentioned a couple of times. I haven't been able to read it, this document yet, but so I don't know if it's said in any other section, but how often should educational technology be used? It's kind of vague and on page 7, number 5. But what would you recommend? Because right now for me, we've kind of been weaning off technology because it's been such a distraction in our class. And
Okay.
I know eventually I'm going to have to use it more strategically. But just as I, have entered student teaching and I've taken over, I'm just trying to get my feet
Okay.
wet first and then introduce it. But I want to know for cycle 2, like, what does that look like?
Okay, and I'm not going to go deep into cycle 2 because I don't want to start confusing people, but I'm going to say that when you get into cycle 2, you're going to have to show your students using technology. And then we'll talk about cycle 2 when we get to it. So in answering your question, you're going to, when you build your step, not cycle 2, but step 2. When you do your step 1, you're going to include this lesson with technology in it. So you can say the students will use their computer to blah, 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 or they will be using whatever kind of technology you can think of. It's going to have to play a part in this cycle, in cycle 2. So that's the best response I can give you without diving so deep into step 2 right now. Does that make sense, Ellie? Did I help you out?
Yeah,
so
thank you.
And I know, like you said, your school is maybe pulling your class, maybe pulling away from it, but you're going to have to demonstrate that in this cycle 2. Okay.
Yeah, I will. I promise.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to have to. So get ready for it. Thank you, Ellie. And then Nina, and then we'll go on and keep building from here. And right now, folks, it's like 6:24. And I do want to be respectful of your time. I don't want to hold you all night. So let's, we'll go through this and then I'll entertain questions and we'll go from there. So thank you so far for your patience and for working with me. Nina?
My question is a logistical question. So as I'm planning this, I'm in music, and I don't know if it's the same for other subjects, but we are mostly co-teaching.
Okay.
So even if I'm teaching a lesson, there are many times that my master teacher will interrupt and just throw something in and take over for like a little bit. Should I, for this, is that okay if I have a video? Like I had one great video where really my sequencing was good, and then she interrupted with one thing and I was like, okay, now I don't know. So can I still use those, or should it be really just me teaching?
It should be you teaching, and I think you might speak with your master teacher and just ask him or her to give you the space. I mean, they know all about what's happening here, and just, when you have to do your videos, have that conversation, and then I'm sure they will respectfully give you that space. But it should be you. The assessor wants to see you in the teaching process, not your master teacher. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Nina. All right, folks, let's, we're over on page 10, and let's go from there. And what I'm going to do is a little informal assessment. How's everybody doing? Is everybody okay so far? Yeah, feeling comfortable? Hector, how you doing, brother?
Doing well.
Okay, cool. All right, folks, thank you. Let's keep moving forward. So again, we're being repetitive, and you all know that good teaching is just repetitive, 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 so that when you walk away tonight, you can go, okay, I think I kind of get it. It was a little clear. That helped out a little bit. So step one, plan. You're gonna choose a class as the focus of your instruction for cycle 2. Like we said, in cycle 1, it was like, choose these 3 students. Hey man, now it's about the class, okay? It's about your whole classroom. Verify, get permission, all that good stuff, blah, 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 all that. And then let's go from there. I must fix it. And then let's go down to getting to know your students. So it reads, provide the information listed below about the context in which you are teaching. The content-specific learning segment to the whole class using the Part A written narrative contextual information template. So when we talked on about the evidence, so Part A is written narrative contextual information about your class, no more than 4 pages. This is when you're going to be sort of laying out who you're working with, who your students are, what their needs are, whether they're gregarious class and all that good stuff, okay? And then I want to go to this call out box. If you are in the same placement as you were for instructional cycle 1, you may transfer any applicable information from the cycle 1 getting to know your student templates to cycle 2 contextual information template. All right, is that clear? However, you must complete and submit the cycle 2 template. Do not resubmit cycle 1. So you all are with me? So you could almost be finished with this Part A if you just grab that information from cycle 1 and transfer it over to cycle 2, okay? Does that make sense for everyone? Thank you, Bettina.
Yep.
Gather information about the student's assets. And assets is like, hey man, what are these students, what do they bring to the class? What is little Johnny, little Ted, little Bill, Sue, and what do they bring to the classroom? How does their energy make this classroom work? How does their curiosity, lay it out, explain it out for me, for the reader, okay? Gather information about students' assets. Don't be negative. And learning needs in a professional and appropriate manner that protects the student's privacy. Just lay it out. You know how to do that, okay? So, and I put down here, getting to know your students. Get real information. Talk with your master teacher or the main office. Do not make up information. Get real information, okay? Asset, what is the it that they bring to the learning? What makes it possible for them to get the most out of the learning? Build them as capable, ready students that you are ready to support and elevate just a little higher with the lessons that you're putting together. But build them as capable, strong, confident students who can learn, and you are going to provide these lessons that's just going to elevate and push them forward, okay? Does that make sense for everyone?
Yep.
So that part A should be a piece of cake and a little walk in the park, because if you finish cycle 1, you already have something to work with, okay? Okay, so we go away from this box and let's go down to descriptions of students' assets and learning needs. So number A, what is their prior academic knowledge related to the learning goals? What is their prior academic knowledge that's related to the learning goals? B, English language proficiency levels, their standard English learners and their English learners. What do you have there in your class? And then number C, their cultural and linguistic resources and funds of knowledge. And that funds of knowledge is all about, their culture and what do they bring from home? How does all of that add to their assets and to their learning needs? Okay, what funds of knowledge do they bring to the table? And how do you use that to conduct your classroom, to construct your lessons, and to elevate and move your students forward? And I'll just say one more time, this learning is about improving and building their skills, their development, and their knowledge, okay? And then over on page 11, number D, what is their prior experience and interests related to the context, okay, that you teach, okay? And then number E, experience using educational technology. Do they have an experience using educational technology? Have they ever used computers before? Have you ever employed their phones or some kind of pad? Have they ever had this before? Kind of mention it. Although this class is very hip and engaging, these students have never used computers, so I'm excited about maybe incorporating technology into this, or you can say these students are very proficient. In the past, they've used, whatever, so bring that out, okay? Okay, so let's go down to number 2, contextual information for the class. And this is, again, stuff that you can grab from one, grade levels, age of students, content area, instructional settings, educational technology appropriate, number of students, total number of students, number of identified English language learners, number of standard English language learners, number of students with individualized IEP, number of students. And if you don't have any of these students, just explain that out. Just say, in this classroom, there are no, so your reader can go, okay, they didn't miss this. They're telling me they don't have it here. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. Simple as that, right? Can't make it up. And then it goes on down, dual language setting, if applicable, bilingual, one way, all this information, go through it. If it's not there, lay it out, okay? You're gonna have 4 pages in this section, so use them wisely, okay? And then number H, topic of content, specific instruction and assessment sequence. What are you going to be focusing on with your students? Okay. So whatever you do, give this area care. This is a picture of your class. This is a background knowledge for the reviewer. Okay, give this page care, because they're going to use this page. If you're teaching, if you're teaching kindergartners, and then they look at your formal assessments, and your assessment is put together for a 5th grader, there's a disconnect. Okay, so be very careful with this page, and this will inform everything else that you do and build. All right. Okay, folks. Let's swing over to page 12. But before I go to page 12, how is everyone doing? Everyone feeling groovy? Okay.
Groovy. Far out, Dr. Quentin.
I know, right? All right.
I got a pretty good joke if you want to hear it.
No.
Right.
That's gonna be like 2 minutes, and we're gonna lose time. People could be getting their shower and getting ready for bed. You're all right, Moise.
All right, Dr. Robinson.
Okay, let's go to, now we're on page 12 and learning segment. So you're going to be planning, so this is part 2 learning segment. Planning a content-specific learning segment that includes 3 to 5 lessons drawn from a larger unit. The learning segment must include the following, okay? Instruction and assessment that is asset-based. Okay, everybody follows me on that. Does everyone follow me on that? Instruction and assessments that is asset-based. Find out what your students freaking need. Find out what they bring to the class, all their knowledge and everything, and then build your instructions and your assessment around that. Okay? And then UDL practices, Universal Design for Planning, okay? The next one, an informal assessment that's checking for understanding during instruction. And that's just, I mean, I haven't been given a great example, but I've been trying to do an informal assessment. How's everyone doing? Is this working for everyone? Does everyone feel comfortable? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too slow? That's your informal assessment. Checking up on your class. Okay. Karen, how are you doing? Is this working for you, Karen? All right. Everyone who's feeling really excited about the lesson so far, give me a thumbs up. That's your informal assessment. When you start to write your assessments out, noises you crazy. When you start to write your assessments out, when you write that informal assessment, explain how you're going to use your informal assessment. You don't need a rubric for this one, but you've got to explain your informal assessment out, okay? Okay. And then let me go on to your, the next bullet. At least one opportunity for students to self-assess, and there must be a rubric attached, okay? Do not forget those two rubrics. And then a formal assessment and a rubric. And what I'm going to do, folks, I am going to, I got a hold of another write-up, you know, someone, an assessment that someone took. I'm going to give that to you and share that with you. And I'm also going to share a couple of rubrics with you. You know, I'll load those onto Canvas, and that should help you get an idea, okay? You don't want to use these elementary rubrics where, give me a smiley face. No, that's not going to work. If you find grade appropriate, you can say, if this works for you, you know, you're gonna have to build a rubric that fits the grade point, but you cannot use these smiley faces and check marks. That's not gonna fly, okay? So just keep that in mind, and I will be providing examples. Nina, I'm gonna take your question, and then we're gonna start to kind of walk out of this because, you know, we're heading down the stretch. Hit me up, Nina.
Thank you. So for these two rubrics, the self-assessment one, I understand, has to be given to the students as well, so they see the rubric. Does the formal assessment also have to have the rubric within the formal assessment, or can we just have the rubric after?
That's a good question. You need to have the formal assessment, and no, the rubric is not going to be tied into the assessment. They should be two separate pieces. Is that what you're asking me?
Almost. So for the self-assessment, they have to use a rubric. So the rubric would be part of that, whatever they get to do the self-assessment.
Exactly.
But the formal assessment does not, right?
No, it does not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Very, very good question, Nina.
Thank you.
And it's so funny. I hear your name, and my favorite cousin, her name is Nina. And so every time I hear her, I go, hey, Nina. And I keep thinking, I got to call Nina and say hi to her. So anyway, just throwing that in there. So let's go on down to the next piece here. So I hit all those bullets. Instructional assessment that is asset-based, UDL practices, informal assessment, okay? Checking for understanding during the instruction, at least one opportunity for students to self-assess using the rubric, and a formal assessment rubric. And then you will use 3 types of these assessments to gather evidence to monitor student learning, provide feedback to students during instructions, and potentially adjust your instructions in the moment, okay? So you use 3 types of these assessments to gather information to monitor student learning, provide feedback to students during instructions, and potentially adjust your instructions in the moment. So you go back up and take a look at these 3 different assessments, and that's what they're talking about. That's what these assessments are going to do, okay? So let's take a look at this call out box. The informal assessment must require the students to create or, okay? So either create and or produce a product a process or a performance, okay? The formal assessment must require the students to create and or produce a product, a visual representation, written product, 3D model, process, mathematical problem with explaining how they solved, okay? Does that make sense for everyone? Okay, so just keep that in mind. That formal assessment is really, you know, kind of a heart of the matter. The informal assessment is happening throughout your lesson, okay? And then the self-assessment, they're going to check out. And then this formal assessment, it really gets down to the nitty-gritty on what do I need to fix? How do I change this? What am I doing? How do we start to step back or propel ourselves forward? Brother Carlos.
So for the assessment itself, it's supposed to have one of those three or all three?
So the formal session, it's going to be require the students to create and produce a product, process. The formal assessment must require the students to create and or produce so either one of the three.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Moises?
So are we gonna have longer than like 5 minutes to record like them creating a product or process, or is it gonna be?
When we get over to 2, I'll lay that out, but you're still doing 5-minute videos, okay? And trust me, when we get over to the video portion, we'll talk about how you do this. We'll talk about how it's done and how it can be captured in 5 minutes, okay?
Right on, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Good question. So let's go down. Okay. So, you know, that could, you know, that could be some kind of solving activity, you know, that they demonstrate for everyone, or some problem solving activity. You know, it's a matter of being creative and making that work, okay? And let's go down here to the learning segment. So this is key. The learning segment must also include opportunities for students to engage in age and or developmentally appropriate higher order thinking skills. How did they solve the problem? An explanation of how they solved the problem. They need to show how the thinking, what is happening within the process, okay? So this is important. This is getting back to our higher order skills, and develop their academic language in the context area taught. So let me read this over again. The learning segment must also include opportunities for students to engage in age and or developmentally appropriate higher order thinking, and develop their academic language in the content areas taught. This is where you want to pull out your Bloom's taxonomy, okay? And start making sure that there's some correlation and connection between the academic language, okay? So get that out and have that close by. And I want you all to know, I want you to know I feel you. I know we're getting into a time crunch, and this could be an overload. So I'm going to start pulling back, okay? So are you engaging your students in analysis, interpretation, higher order thinking? Are they thinking about things? Are they going like, wow, what does she mean by this? Or, ooh, I never thought about pigs being bacon. And so am I eating a pig every time I eat bacon? Like, wow, that blows my mind. How do you get bacon out of a pig if a pig is, you know, that kind of thing, that higher order thinking where they're starting to really question and say, I don't understand that, that kind of stuff. Okay. So keep that in mind. How did they solve a problem? An explanation how they solved the problem, and to show that the thinking was happening and occurring. This is what your lesson segment has to include. It has to be rich, okay? I'm gonna stop right here, and I wanna ask, how is everyone doing? Should I squash this and then give you some time to go and start building and really thinking about putting together your step one? And then when we come back next week, I can kind of look at page 13 a little more, 13, 14, and then we flip over and go to step two. So just tell me, how are you feeling? Is everyone okay? Are you thinking like, Quentin, you're killing me right now? I want to know so so that you'll still love me when this is over.
All good.
Talk to me, Nina. Tell me what you're thinking.
I know for many of us, maybe as we're thinking about the lesson planning, we're also trying to consider the videos that we have to do to make sure that our lesson plan contains everything within a span of 5 minutes to show everything that they want in a video. So I think for me, it would be helpful to also look at step two, at least the requirements for the videos a little bit.
You know what, one thing I can do, I can come back when we go into step two, and I can relate and connect very nicely, trust me.
Mhm.
And I can do that for you. In step two, it'll be easier to step back to step one, and then, with step two, than it will be to try to do step one and try to talk about videos too. So
Okay.
trust me, I want you to know I hear you, Nina, and
Mhm.
I can help you with that when we get to step two. So trust me, I feel you, and I can help out with that. I'm not
Okay.
gonna leave you in the cold, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Moises, your hand up. Does anyone else have any questions, or are you all ready to go home? Are you done with
good.
me?
Yeah, sorry about
Anybody?
that, yeah. I'm good.
I've been hearing Moises and Nina and
I
anybody
think
else.
I think we're good for tonight, and just continue next week with where we're at.
Okay.
And then yeah, I think that would be best.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Michael. Anyone else? Anybody else? I would love to hear your voices. It means a lot if you talk to me. Tyler, I see your thumbs up.
Are we back in person next week?
Oh, you know what? Well, I'll talk about that in just a minute.
I'm good with that, Quentin. Thank you.
Okay, so basically no one else is really talking. I've heard from a few people. But Tina, your hand is up.
Yeah, I got a quick question. Are we also gonna get video examples like we did last time?
You know what? I think I may have some video examples for you that I can share. Those really can be helpful. Yeah, I think I'll have some video examples.
Okay.
Nicholas, your hand is up, and then Brendan, I'll come to you. Nicholas, talk to me.
Well, I do have some questions, but I don't know, I don't want to take up too much time, but I was gonna wait till maybe we adjourn for the evening, and then I'll just talk to you for a few minutes. Is that can that be
Yeah.
okay?
And let's put emphasis on few, because I got a roast in the oven. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah.
That wasn't funny. Okay, Nicholas didn't even laugh. Okay, Emily.
Hi, Quentin. I just
Hi.
wanted to kind of like I remember last semester you put us on kind of like a timeline, to have everything at least thinking about starting a recording in like October it was. So I was just wondering.
We talked about that last week. We're on April 14th.
Yes. And so I was wondering, just because I think most school districts and Fullerton also has like a week-long spring break in March before. So I was wondering when you think is kind of like an appropriate time to have at least like been done recording, or, just kind of a timeline that way, like how much of it is front loaded, like kind of like the front work that you do beforehand. And then how much of this do you think you want to have left over after kind of recording to wrap things up?
Wow, that's an interesting question. And let's talk about that in cycle 2.
Okay.
Okay, because that's a good question, and because let's talk about that in cycle 2, because I can start talking about that right now, and we'll start digging into 2. So let's talk about that next week, and then we'll start talking about front loading and cutting your videos and all that good stuff.
Okay, thank you.
But Simon, talk to me real fast.
Hi, just wanted to ask, last week you mentioned that you might request the single subject assessment guide, or
what? And here's the thing, Daddy-O, that's a good question. You don't need the single assess, it's no, the only difference between multiple subject and single subject is multiple subjects, they ask you that little emphasis, now you're doing literacy, then you do math. That's the only difference. There is no other difference whatsoever.
Gotcha. Just wanted to follow up because last week it sounded like you maybe were going to investigate that, but I trust you there. Okay.
And I did investigate it, and I was all like, because the thing is, I have mine here, and I kind of use this, and everything matches what you have, but it doesn't. The single subject, there's no difference whatsoever. The only difference is either you're going to use math or literacy. Other than that, single subject and multi-subject, this document is the absolute unequivocal same. But good question, Simon. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna, so let's do this one thing and then I'll do this one thing, and then we're going to stop for tonight. On page 13, number 1, California Content Standard or Curriculum Framework. Hey man, hey lady, when you use these standards, man, use the full language. Cut and paste if you have to. Don't shortchange there. I don't want anybody getting an A9, a condition code, reading they didn't use the California Content Standard, or because you abbreviated it, or you talked about it in a very haphazard way. Hey man, whatever standards you use, lay it out strongly, boldly, and clearly, okay? Don't code. I had students do all this work and they get an A9. And they go, but I have it right here. And I go, yeah, you abbreviated it. You just use these codes. The reader probably didn't, I'm not saying the reader didn't know, but it probably wasn't clear to the reader. And so I said, redo it and start off by saying, here's the standard I will be using. This, and then lay it out. Do a space, and then start to explain it out and incorporate it in your work. But just be very clear. Do not chintz on this area, okay, folks? So that's it for tonight. We'll pick up on page 13 when we get back next week. And I'm anticipating that everyone is going to start working. You should be thinking about your lessons. You should be getting that. You should be getting all this evidence. You should be thinking about bam, bam, bam. That's what I can do. Building that formal assessment, building that rubric. You should start working. Don't be asleep. And I think some of your hands are up because you might be asking if we're going to be online or if we're going to be on the ground next week. I will find out where we are and what we will be. And when I find out, I will send you a very clear announcement letting you know. And if the university says that we're on the ground, we're going to have to be on the ground. I can't say, oh, well, we're just going to go Zoom. Okay, so I'll let you know that I'll meet you at this location in this room, and I'll see you then. Okay. All right, Brendan and then Kyle, you guys have your hands up. Brendan.
Thank you, Quinn.
Okay, take care, everybody. Everybody have a
thank you.
great evening. You guys are awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan, talk to me.
All right,
Thank you.
so like I know I brought it up earlier, but like when I think people were getting mistaken what I was asking about, but like when I was wanting to look for the lesson, like the lesson template and the written descriptions template, I was trying to make you aware that it wasn't on the course materials page on the Canvas site. And fortunately, someone was able to share it on like the chat here, and I was able to download them to my Google Docs, but I'm saying like the documents weren't there on Canvas.
Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll go and make and thanks for bringing to my attention. I thought they were there, and so I will take care of that. Okay.
Okay, that's all I
No,
need
you're
to
awesome.
make you
Thank-
aware of, but
thank you,
everything
brother.
else I'll just get to work on it.
Okay. Thank you, brother. Take
All right,
care.
thank you so much.
Brother Kyle.
Hi there, Clinton. So with the content standards, similar to TPA1, we don't want to just abbreviate or word it ourselves. The ideal situation here is you can literally just copy and paste what the standards are.
Yes,
Right?
my
There's no
brother.
reason not to.
Hey, man, that's what I'm talking about. You know, and
They're
that
right
just
there, they're explicit, and
they're in
they
your
speak for
face.
themselves.
And then you just start your work and your writing, and you can talk about them as you go. But this is the standard I will be using. Be very clear and be bold.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So
Thank you, brother
am doing
Kyle.
that right. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Kenton.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Brother Nicholas.
Thank you. Okay, so I was thinking about this for a couple of days regarding the rubrics, right, in the assessment. So